Welcome back to Simple Truth. You know, the problem with knowing a story is you start tying in the parts that aren't there yet with the parts that are there and all these things, and you get ahead. And this is why I take 15 days to do one verse, right? Because you're just trying to tie in and to preach the whole story at the same time. So I'm going to like speed read. You ready for me? Let's look at verse 12, chapter 17, 1 Samuel. We're in the story of David and Goliath, right? We got the whole thing set up. There's this big, humongous, ugly giant. Right? I don't know why we always come up with the idea that Goliath was some big, hairy, ugly dude, right? They just want to make the bad guy some ugly guy. Do you know sometimes the bad guy is really cute? Sometimes the bad guy is just really beautiful, right? If you look at Cinderella's story and you look at all these other stories, you know that the bad, evil queen witch, she's not ugly, right? Sometimes the enemy puts beautiful things in front of us, right? It says, hey, you know what? This is great. This is fantastic. Let's look at verse 12. It says this. Now David, he's the hero, right, was the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah named Jesse, right, who had 8 sons. It's amazing. In the days of Saul, the man was already old, advanced in years. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to battle. And the names of his 3 sons who went into the battle were Eliab, Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. That right there tells you that there's something really weird about this story, because God always uses the firstborn, always uses the best, always uses the biggest, always uses the greatest, always. Oh wait, no, he doesn't, right? But we know whenever God puts a detail in, it's super important, right? He uses the least, right? So here we go, way out of character. The 3 older brothers, they're out fighting the battle. And David is the youngest of 8 brothers, right? He's the guy that's going to be lost his entire life, right? In the Old Testament, the oldest got a double portion of everything. The youngest, well, they just got in trouble, right? So this is the problem, right? So David's the youngest, right? The 3 eldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Now, we know the story, right? We know what is David doing? He's going back and forth to Saul to play the harp, because God sent an evil spirit upon Saul because he pulled away his anointing. So it wasn't just that he pulled away his anointing. He doubled down and said, I'm going to let evil get you. You ever seen somebody like that? You ever seen somebody where all of a sudden the anointing's pulled away and God doubles down and says, I'm going to let evil have a hold of you for a little bit? You should see that, because that's part of the Matthew 18 principle, right? People who don't respond to God, God's going to send them out and let them get attacked by the enemy, hopefully because it'll turn them back to God. Only Saul, that doesn't happen. Right? So David, we know David's the replacement for Saul. How crazy of a story is this, right? Do you know what happens when the king finds out down the road that David's the replacement? He tries to kill him. But currently, Saul doesn't have that idea yet. The enemy hasn't put that idea in his head. Again, I wish I could stop right there and preach that. Do you know the enemy puts in Saul's head truth? The truth is, David was going to be the next king. The truth was, David was the new anointed king. The truth was all that stuff, and the enemy puts it in his head, trying to use it destructively, right? Here's verse 16. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward, took his stand morning and evening. Verse 17, Jesse said to David, his son, take for your brothers an ephah and parched grain, and then these 10 loaves, carry them quickly to the camp for your brothers. Also, take 10 cheeses to the commander of their thousands. See if your brothers are well, and bring some token from them. So, again, all of a sudden, Jesse is moved to send his son out to the battle to see how it's going, to give the brothers some food, right? To greet the commander, right? Do all of these things. We think that this is just a normal, everyday thing. But God's setting them up. Do you know that sometimes God has you doing normal things, but it's a setup? You're just simply in the right place at the right time, and God's going to do something miraculously with you. But you're just being obedient. You just think you're doing what you're supposed to do. Imagine if David had thrown a fit. He said, I don't want to go take this to my brothers. They don't like me. I'd rather stay with the sheep, right? like we do sometimes. Sometimes we throw those fits and we say to God, God says, I need you to do this. I need you to be here. I need you to go here. I need you to say this. Nope. I don't want to do it. I don't want to work with those people. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in that program. I don't want to leave now. It's just getting fun, right? Can remember that as a kid. My parents on Saturday nights would have people over for game night, but they would always come at like 8 o'clock at night, right? And then we had to go to bed at like 8:30. Right? And we just throwing a fit about going to bed because they were always making pizza and drinking Pepsi and playing Uno and they were having a blast downstairs, and we had to go to bed, right? We don't want to miss out. But God says, listen, this time is important. Where you are is important. All of these things, right? Now, look at verse 19. We're going to finish this up. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines, which is a little bit of a problem, right? Because they weren't really fighting. They were just lined up to fight, but nobody would fight. I think I could preach this all day. So let me give you the simple truth on this. Are you lined up to fight, or are you actually fighting? Are you lined up? You go to church on Sunday morning, you sit in your pew, and you're lined up to fight. Man, you're volunteered, you're in the army. But when it comes to actually fighting on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the enemy, you are nowhere to be found. The second the enemy comes forth and says, hey, just come out and fight me, face me, right? No, we don't want to face him. We don't want to battle with cancer or financial problems or relational problems or mental problems or emotional problems. We don't want to fight him. When's the last time you volunteered to do whatever it takes to fight the enemy in somebody else's life or your own life? When's the last time you took on the enemy in your church? When's the last time when everybody else is running for the doors, you're running inside? When's the last time that you were willing to fight? When's the last time that you said, God, I wish you'd take this cancer from me. I wish you'd take this disease from me. I hope you do, but if not, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight and fight and fight. When's the last time you fought at work? Or do you just go to your boss and demand you get to move to a new position, or you just quit on them, or somebody else has to quit? When do you fight the battles? Or are you just lined up talking about fighting? In my life, probably in your life, spend a lot more time lining up in battle. Oh man, we want those front places in battle line. Right? We want everybody to know we're in the battle. But when the giant comes out and asks us to actually step forward and fight, we suddenly want everybody else to be in the front, and we'll be in the back telling them what to do. Right? You wanted to be the commander because the commander stood in the back, away from the battle, directed the battle. Now there's great value in that. That's super important. But guess who our commander is? God. Our commander is God. He stands in the back, front, middle, all around, and he commands the army, and he directs the battle, and he wants you to fight. Don't usurp God's position. God's not looking for you to be a commander of his army. God's looking for you to be in his army, fighting the battles. So, there's my simple truth. Are you lined up to fight? Are you actually fighting? Because this makes it sound like the Israelites are actually fighting, but we know from the story, no, they were just lining up to fight. Hey, see you next time. Simple truth.